What's up guys, K-Plays here. Kulve Taroth is back again. Her last weapon update brought us the amazing Taroth Pipe Sleep, and this time she's gotten out 1 but 7 new hunting horns for us to farm for. I finally managed to collect them all, and I'm here to tell you guys that they're... okay. See, the Kjarr weapons seem to mostly be Capcom's attempt at making elemental weapons more viable, with 2 status spamming options thrown for good measure. That's all well and good, but for hunting horn, I'm not really expecting anything crazy out of these. For what it's worth, Paralysis and Crusher actually do seem pretty decent if you're looking for something good at applying those status as well, although Crusher specifically unfortunately has to compete with the stronger Lunastra horns for that particular niche. It's the 5 elemental options that really throw things for a loop. The reason why stems from a little bit of Monster Hunter damage mechanics. I'll only go into things briefly here, but if you want a more detailed explanation, Ginjinx and Tuna have a great video on their channel about it that I'll link in the description below. For the short version though, weapons in Monster Hunter tend to sit between 2 extremes. The ones that attack rapidly tend to prefer elemental damage builds because the motion values for each individual hit tend to be lower. Elements apply at a set amount of extra damage per hit depending on the monster's weaknesses, so things that hit fast naturally rack up elemental damage ticks much faster. On the other hand, weapons that hit slower but harder tend to prefer boosting raw damage a lot more. They hit less often, but each hit counts for a lot more because their higher motion values put a larger portion of your attack power behind each swing. Of course, the rule for elemental damage that benefits fast weapons works in reverse here. Less hits over time means less elemental damage ticks over time. Hunting Horn definitely falls into that second category with all the heavier, more deliberate attacks in its moveset. So all the lower raw, higher element options with mostly utility songs that we got aren't exactly a recipe for greatness. We probably won't be seeing any Kjarr weapons top any charts anytime soon, but they can at least be made decently usable if you want a little more variety outside of the usual handful of high raw hunting horns. Let's look at what we're dealing with first here though. Starting off with Kjarr Rage, we have a bit of a weird situation for fire. It loses 20 raw, 60 fire, and 2 augment slots compared to Enchabarone in exchange for an extra 25% affinity and a longer sharpness bar. High affinity master set sets are so easy to make though that the trade-offs don't really make up for the loss of power, especially when there's an older Taroth version with both the extra sharpness and 10 more raw. That said, all 3 just about break even with the right set, so you can go with whatever works best for you. Next we have Kjarr Stream. Unlike Rage, this one looks a lot better than the original. It gets more white sharpness, 150 more ice element, and trades an augment slot for a free 10% affinity. Nothing much more to say here. On top of the extra build flexibility you get from built-in crit element, Stream is a straight upgrade over the old Legiana hunting horn. The only place it really suffers is losing that unique original design, but personally I'll chalk that up as an acceptable loss in exchange for much more usable stats. Yarmuth is another all-around better take on the original. For only a trade-off of 30 thunder and an augment slot, it gets 10% affinity, white sharpness, and room to build more raw. Thunderbolt horn has always been almost unusably weak, so Myth is a second chance at a decent high thunder horn. They still share the same low raw issue though, so you'll only want to use this against really thunder weak enemies. Last up for the elemental horns, we have the alternate versions of Taroth Pipe, Dragon, and Water. Now these are interesting. On the base side, the Kjarr versions lose their 20 defense bonus, level 3 slots, and some of the elemental damage, but gain some extra white sharpness and affinity. The most important thing here though is that they no longer need free element, which is huge. That free space in their sets means more room for other skills, which allows you to make up for the elemental damage loss with raw damage gain and increase your total affinity for crit element and master touch synergy. With that covered though, let's talk set building. The built-in crit element bonus boosts your elemental damage by 25%. When you do the math, all the originals except for Legiana Sectored actually still went out in elemental damage with their individual sets. The advantage comes more from your increased set options. Without having your gear restricted to 3 pieces of Teastra and 2 pieces of Rathalos for crit element, you're free to build in the extra raw damage instead. This leaves you with boosted damage where it counts a lot more for Hunting Horn, with the extra elemental damage just stacking on its bonus. The result is a decently workable setup that you can tweak to go after specific elemental weaknesses. Just keep in mind that as hard as you can make these things hit, your standard attack boosting horns with raw maxing skills will probably still beat them out in more cases than they'll ever match up or pull ahead. Hunting Horn is still a raw focused weapon, so this is less a way to make element better than raw and more just an attempt at making it usable for the sake of more weapon choice variety for anybody that wants it. If you do decide to attempt this strategy, remember what I said before about elemental damage. Attack frequency helps. You get better mileage out of your elemental horns if you focus on using multi-hit moves like recitals and super pounds or quick attacks like the double swing or forward slam. The more you mix it up, the more elemental damage ticks you'll put out over time. It won't be anything near what bow or dual blades can do, but it'll help. You'll also want to look into specific elemental weaknesses for each monster, because unlike the general purpose raw horns that you can bring against anything and do just fine, you'll have to match these to the right targets to use them well. I'll be taking these out on some solo runs just to see how well they actually do myself, so keep an eye out for those hunts in the future. For now, let's get to the final 2 Kjarr horns. Crusher is the new variation of the old Gamo hunting horn. With twice the amount of blast and 15% more affinity in exchange for an augment and 2 level 2 slots, we have a more or less straight upgrade. Thing actually comes really close to being up there with some of the real heavy hitters, but unfortunately the need for handicraft for top damage holds it back. You can have decent amount of white sharpness, you can have peak performance, but it's really hard to get both. Because it has to choose between one or the other, it ends up falling behind all the other good blast horns in pure raw damage because they can all fit both onto the same build. If you want to see a lot of explosions though, this is definitely your hunting horn thanks to that extra 25% boost from status crit without being forced into 3 pieces of Zora gear. Last but not least, we have Kjarr Paralysis. Like Dragon and Water, it gets some extra affinity and no longer needs free element in exchange for losing that free 20 bonus defense and some of its original status value. Compared to the Taroth version, it also starts off with 10 less raw, but since you no longer need to make room for free element, you can make up for that with more damage skills. Using this set made up with a couple pieces of the new Arch-Tempered Kulve set, you'll be hitting a lot harder than the original with all your attack boosts up and running. Choosing between these two is going to be a matter of whether you want more status or more damage. With that, we're all finished up with covering these new horns. I really wish we got a Kjarr version of Taroth Sleep or maybe a good new poison hunting horn, but unfortunately no weapon classes got new poison or sleep options. My verdict for what we did get for hunting horns? A lot of new options, but nothing that'll change the current meta. These will all just be here to add a little variety, so if you don't manage to get them all, don't worry about it. You aren't missing out on any must-have drops. If you do have them, give them a try, and if you want them, I wish you guys the best of luck. This has been K-Plays, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.